From Congressman-elect Joe Cunningham to Henry McMaster winning his full term as governor of South Carolina, I speak exclusively with the Post and Courier's Brian Hicks for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. Brian Hicks, it is so good to see you again.
It's good to see you, Quintin.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. It's an interesting time around here, particularly in South Carolina politics.
Yes, it is.
And I went back and read your column, which you actually published Wednesday morning, but you had to do an editor's note because Cunningham actually won as the new congressman for 1st Congressional District. If you were to rewrite that headline for that particular column, what would it be now?
That's a good question, because I don't remember much about it, except that I think I changed the headline when I wrote it. I think that Democrats sing the blues except in Charleston.
I saw it, yeah.
I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, now Charleston kind of looks like this little blue island in a Red Sea. And I was amazed that Cunningham was able to build up such a lead in Charleston County that Arrington could carry every other county and he still win.
What does that tell you in your mind about the future of the 1st Congressional District?
Well, I've been writing for a while now that it's been changing. The district's demographics are changing with Sun City down in Beaufort County and Bluffton,
right,
and with the Del Webb community up there in Berkeley County,
right,
Cane Bay. You get a lot of people moving in here who are retiring, and they're coming from the Midwest, the Northeast, and their politics aren't all the same as South Carolina politics. So you're going to see some changes. And the district, which is drawn with about an 11-point Republican lead, I think that's been eroding a little bit over the years. But if you look at the numbers, I think a lot of Republicans just voted for Joe Cunningham is what happened. Because Arrington's margins in those other counties were not nearly as high as they normally would have been.
Where should it have been in your mind?
I would have thought it would have been closer to, she would have had high 50s, almost 60% in a place like Berkeley or in Beaufort County, particularly Dorchester County, which is her home county.
Right.
She just carried Dorchester just by 2,000 votes, which is kind of funny as someone at the newspaper said, you can't even admit you're a Democrat if you live in Dorchester County. But I think the demographics are changing. I think that there was a tenor of the race. I suspect you're going to see probably close to 20 Republicans trying to run for that seat in 2020.
As a matter of fact, I was just reading FitzNews.com article where it basically says everyone from Nancy Mace to Katie Arrington to a couple other people who may run for that seat in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Who's that ideal person that could represent the 1st Congressional District on the Republican side?
I don't know. I think somebody like Sanford, who is, very conservative, but not exactly a President Trump, lockstep kind of guy. I don't know if he comes back again. You never count him out. He might want to. I actually think that Cunningham is sort of the Democratic flip side of a Mark Sanford. And I think that's who you need to win, who the Republicans would have to win the 1st district. Unfortunately, they'll go through the primary, and you might end up with the most extreme right candidate coming out of that primary, and that would favor Cunningham's reelection.
You talk about that candidate who would win the primary for the Republicans 2 years from now, and earlier this particular year was Katie Arrington.
Mm-hmm.
Why Katie Arrington and not Mark Sanford as far as a primary win?
Well, in the primary, you get more of the party diehards, and President Trump remains pretty popular in South Carolina, at least among conservative Republicans. And she was basically, touting Trump's talking points, and Sanford had called out the president on a few of his more egregious things, And there's always been, there's always been some resistance to Sanford in the Republican Party, and I think she just kind of caught him napping and hit at the right time.
But was she napping this time around during the general election?
No, I don't think she was napping. I wrote several columns about why is Katie Arrington running like she's behind? Well, because she was behind, and I think her internal polls must have showed that. She was running a primary campaign in the general election.
Okay.
Instead of trying to reach out, and most people, they run to their edges during a primary to get the most partisan people. Then they try to sound more moderate and easy to please everyone in the general. Well, Arrington never did that. She kept right on campaigning. She stayed on the Trump bandwagon and kept repeating those talking points and running those kind of national Republican Party ads. And it was kind of bizarre, but it was because she was behind it. She was having to try to get her numbers up in the base, which obviously were depressed.
And you talked about Charleston County earlier. Obviously, there was a big upset as far as the Charleston County Register of Deeds. Current Charleston County School Board member Michael Miller will become the next Charleston County Register of Deeds, while Tom Hartnett will not. How did we get here with that?
Well, you look at this. You've got Mary Tinkler, you got Peter Tecklenburg. Charleston has been about a 50-50 county, 50% Republican, 50% Democrat for years. It's starting to shade more blue. So I think you're going to see a lot more of those countywide offices go to Democrats.
And obviously, on the other side, with the probate court judge, Irv Condon has retained his seat as the probate court judge. He's a Republican from Charleston County. Stephanie Ganaway Paisley will not be the probate court judge. When you look back at that race to right now, what still plays in your mind?
Which particular race?
Or the probate court judge?
I think it's just that Irv Condon's name is known. He's been around for a long time. Everybody knows him. Everybody knows he's a judge, and they see his name, and they don't recognize the other name, so they just vote for Irv.
Okay.
But in something like Michael Miller, I think he probably benefited from people knowing him from the school board. He also benefited from a lot of people voting straight Democratic ticket.
Okay.
If you at the top of the ballot, you want to vote for all Democrats or all Republicans. Right. This year in Charleston County, the straight party vote was, around 10% higher for Democrats than Republicans. And I think that helped him.
And when you look at that ballot on Tuesday, it was also nonpartisan when it came to the Charleston County School Board race, which was a hotly contested race, particularly with the coalition of kids supporting current and future Charleston County School Board members. Why so much money? Why so much attention in a local school board race?
I don't know. I've been saying for years that as political as Washington is, there is nothing more political than school board politics. And I don't know if some of that's anti-postal aid, some of it is people wanting to, bring in more charter schools and have a board friendly to allowing that. I don't know, people just get really emotional about that. And I try to stay away from school board politics. It's a dangerous business.
And I'll tell you what, when we talk more about the ballot, obviously Governor McMaster and Pamela Abbott were on there on the Republican side, and then you had James Smith and Mandy Powers-Norrell on the Democratic side. Mm-hmm. When you look at that race, what does that tell you about the gubernatorial race coming up in 4 years?
It tells me that, barring any catastrophe, Governor McMaster will get to see his plan to be governor for 10 years.
Okay.
James Smith has been a legislator for a long time, and as good a candidate as the Democrats have put up in a while, with his military background and his bipartisan reputation in the state house, he was a good candidate. I don't know that he was as dynamic a campaigner as he could have been. He was a little low key, but I think that that's just the reality of the state. Are. It's a majority Republican state, and so Governor McMaster not only had the incumbency and the party affiliation, he had all of the advantages in that race.
Where do we go from here when it comes to politics in South Carolina?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't think much changed. I mean, you saw, as you know, I don't know that you would call it a blue wave. I mean, it was a typical midterm pickup for the party out of power. Although the Democrats did flip a number of seats that they probably wouldn't most other years. In South Carolina, the only real upset like that you saw was the first district,
Right.
and the register of deeds, which I think is just because it was a Charleston County, and Charleston County was so blue this time. That helped Michael Miller. But I really don't see much changing. It's going to moderate. There may be room for more moderate Democrats like a Joe Cunningham in future years, at least along the coast where you're getting more retirees in from different parts of the country.
Right.
I like to know when I got to South Carolina 20-something years ago, it was a great place for newspapers because there was all this crazy stuff happening. There were all these characters in politics, and it was all really fun. And now if you look at this, if you look at our state, South Carolina is a fairly calm conservative state. We're not producing the kind of crazy candidates you see in places like Texas and Kansas and Florida, to name a few. But so it's almost gotten more boring for reporters.
Wow.
And I mean, there's still plenty of people to keep me employed, but I don't know. I think that it's going to remain conservative. It may get a little less red, but not a lot.
And let me get back to Katie Arrington. I know when you wrote a column about her this past summer, you basically said, if she stays quiet, she could probably win this race.
Yes.
Unfortunately, a lot of people say that unfortunately she's not staying quiet because she blamed her loss basically on Mark Sanford, according to some people. She went on Facebook Live saying that she's not going to go away. She's going to take some time off, but she's coming back. If you were to write basically a column headline about Katie Arrington right now, what will it say to the readers?
Well, funny you should say that because my column tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow
is about Katie.
Friday.
And it is, I forget what the headline is, but it was basically Arrington unsurprisingly plays the victim card, blaming Mark Sanford for her loss. And I had Republicans all through the campaign saying if she would just be quiet, she'd have this in the bag. She'd win this by 10 points, easy. And she just kept on with the Trump thing. I think that's just her nature and her personality, and she is kind of a spitfire. And I think it turned off a lot of voters. I was hearing in the days after the primary,
Right.
when she beat Mark Sanford, Republicans that I know, very conservative voters,
Right.
I know were saying, I can't vote for her. I'm voting for Joe Cunningham. And I started hearing that earlier and earlier. Of course, I would never write a column that said, I think Cunningham's going to win, because I didn't think that was possible in this district. But it was a growing thing, and I think she only reinforced some of those negative perceptions. And she had, I felt a little bad about it. I mean, I didn't like what she was doing. I didn't like the politics of, the kind of Trumpy stuff. But I felt bad because I was writing about her, and then during the governor's race, I'd been writing about Catherine Templeton, who used the same playbook.
Okay.
And I think that the reason that neither one of those succeeded, neither one of those campaigns succeeded, is there may be a little bit of sexism going on there. I think that men candidates can get away with acting more, bombastic like Trump than women can. It tends to turn off the voters, and it clearly did, or she would have had higher, higher margins of victory in some of the other counties. There were clearly Republicans voting Cunningham, and I don't think most Republicans in South Carolina would rather vote for a brick than a Democrat.
Would she have done better in a different county versus Charleston? Now that Charleston, in some people's mind, is turning blue. if the general election was held in Richland County or Greenville County, would she have won?
I think she might have won in any other congressional district in this state. Maybe not the 5th.
Okay.
Maybe not the 5th. And I'm not positive about the complete makeup of Joe Wilson's district. The second, it's kind of gerrymandered. But yeah, she would have won 7th, 3rd, 4th. She would have won those districts, I think.
And people talked a lot about gerrymandering in the years past. People I talked to for Quintin's close-ups. Did Joe Cunningham, in your mind, shadow that talk of gerrymandering?
No, I think this was a special. I think this was a special case. I don't want to take anything away from Cunningham. He ran a very smart and very good campaign. I thought he did it exactly right, and I was impressed with him. But I think in a normal year, he still has trouble getting over that straight Republican vote in a district that's drawn like that. And 2020 will actually be the last election of the first district before it's redrawn again. So who knows how it's going to change. I have argued for a long time that Charleston should have its own congressional district based on population. Dorchester, Berkeley, and Charleston, by the time they redraw the lines, those 3 counties could be a congressional district unto themselves. And you saw how blue Charleston County went for the first district. I mean, I think Cunningham had 17,000 vote margin.
Right.
You have to think the bluest parts of Charleston County are not in the first district because this Jim Clyburn's 6th district dips into North Charleston and comes right down the peninsula and takes out a lot of very Democratic precincts.
Okay.
And that's, that's gerrymandering. So depending on how it gets redrawn, we'll see what happens.
And when you hear the stories of people having to wait in line for 2 hours, 4 hours just to vote in certain areas here in Charleston, where were you emotionally?
Well, I was kind of in a panic because I was on deadline and the vote totals were coming in. But no, it's not. It made me think that we need to expand absentee voting. We need to have true early voting, and we kind of do in name only. It's just not called that, but we need to expand early voting. And Charleston County, they do a good job. They're a good crew up there. They had a lot of volunteers that didn't show up on election day, and that slowed down the vote. I think I want to say like 200 people who had volunteered did not show up to help, and that slowed down the vote tremendously.
This is news here.
Yeah, I think we had a story on it. But that hurt them a little bit. And but a lot of people voted. This was a huge turnout. I think 26% more than we saw in the midterms in 2014.
Right.
In fact, nationally, this was the biggest midterm turnout since 1966. And between that and some staffing shortages, it made for long lines, but there were long lines all over the country. And I think that we ought to look at how we vote. I think that voting should be easier, not harder. And I, applaud everyone who's stood in line for 2 hours to do it. But I think that it should be easier for them.
Brian Hicks, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate this.
Well, thanks. Good to see you as always.
Likewise. Yes, sir.